whilst I'm going through the carving here and there, I'll just show you what I'm doing, whilst I do various sections of the carving, whilst I'm actually taking out the detail around the edges. For example, here's a bit of detail around the font, and just take things slowly, don't dig in deeply, just use the very tip of your carving tool as I showed you before, and just carve away the edges around all the areas that you want to stay in and print. And for these V-shaped tools, you'll actually be able to see where the edge of the V-blade is, and you line that up against the edge of the place where you want to carve. Now obviously for something as thin as this, you really need to take this slowly, no need to rush. Keep the edge of this V-blade next to the edge of where you've drawn your line. And the V-blade does all the work for you. What you don't want to do is actually have where you're carving away cutting under the black line, because obviously that's going to be very unstable when you come to print it. So what the V-tool does is it actually already makes the bottom of this line wider than the top of this line, just due to the nature of the V edge. So that's why it's a really useful thing to actually use the V-tool in order to do your initial carving around all the edges, because then you can be sure that you've got a nice sturdy printing top for your design. And again, I'm just coming around the other side. Again, just the edge of this V-tool, you don't need to dig in very deeply, just go quite lightly. And the edge of that V-tool is just going around the edge of the black line there. And you can see when you take that out, that the black line is actually on quite a solid base. There's no undercutting of the material from underneath the black line. So I'm going to continue doing that, and I'll just come back and show you various pieces, and then we'll get on to actually carving out the majority of the blank space. And a nice way to get a bit of texture into your carving is to just let your carving tool wobble a bit. So just along the edge of this leaf here, I'm just going to wobble the carving tool back and forth as I push forward, and that'll just bring a little bit of curvy texture into that leaf. You can see I've actually come to the centre of this E here that I want to cut out. Now, because that's a very fine line there, I actually don't really want to use my V-tool for that, because sometimes the V-tool is hard to get into the corners. So I'm actually going to use the X-Acto knife with the number 11 point on there, and I go into the carving material, again just the very tip of the knife point, you don't need to dig in, and I'm going in at a 45-degree angle, and the angle is away from the area that I want to print, and I just bring that round each side of the inside of the letter E, and again very carefully along this very narrow part of the E. And because I've gone in at a 45-degree angle, I can just literally just pick the piece of carving material out of the middle there, and that's given me a perfect centre to my letter E. I've finished going around to the outside of all the areas that I want to print with my fine V-blade tool, and I'm just going to show you again what I did into the letter E's with the camera at this slightly different angle, so hopefully you'll be able to see it a bit better. And again with the scalpel, just go in with the blade at a 45-degree angle and do it in sections. You don't have to do it all in one sweep of the knife. And that just pops out like that because you've gone in at this 45-degree angle. Basically the blade is going underneath and cutting the material away underneath. There you go, and you get a nice neat centre to your letter E. And again you can do that on other parts of the carving as well. I mean, this letter P, I've actually gone round the inside of that one because it's a larger area there with the V tool, but now I can go in and remove that centre. And the same thing, just going in at a 45-degree angle underneath the centre of the carved material that's there, and again that just pops out, leaving a nice clean area in the middle. Right, so now I want to actually go on and clear out the rest of this area. Now I quite like having carving lines, and I'm going to show you on a previous carving that I did. I like actually having all these lines on here. I think it gives a lot of life to the piece, and also having this nice border around just finishes the piece off as well. So I'm going to go for that effect with this particular carving as well, which makes clearing out very easy. Sometimes you might want to actually clear out in the direction of the carving. Now if I just reach over here and get another carving I've done in the past. In fact, this is a nice example. I've got two here. This example of a tree that I've carved out in exactly the same way as what I want to do today, basically just straight lines across and then having a border around. So that's one effect that you can get, or you can go for another effect. This is exactly the same tree that I've done, but this time when I've been carving out the areas that I want to clear away, I've actually followed the contours of the tree, and as you can see that creates a different effect with a lot more movement to it, almost as if the tree was waving in the wind. So think about when you're actually designing your carving, not only what the actual carving looks like, but also how you want the areas you clear away to look. It could be that you just want totally white, black and white image, so you don't want any of these carving lines to show up at all, which is fine. If that's your style, you know, go for it. But this is my particular style. I do love to have these lines in, so that's just how I achieve that effect. So back to the carving now. To clear away areas, I have the two other tools that I was talking about, the V-blade, slightly larger V-blade, and the U-shaped blade. I think in this particular instance I'm going to use the U-shaped blade because there's quite a lot of area to clear out, and the V-shaped blade doesn't take as much out as a U-shaped blade does. What I might do though is in areas where it's particularly tight, like here, I might actually use the V-blade to go in again and take a bit more of the carving away at the side, and then I've got a slightly wider angle then to actually get my U-blade in and behind and start cutting away. I mean, that's purely, you know, personal choice. So there might be times when I just think, oh, I'll just go in and carve. Other times there might be times when I think, well, I could really do with a bit of extra help here to get the knife behind. certain area, and I'll clear away. So that's basically it. The U-blade makes it really easy, takes a nice chunk of the carving material out, and I'm just going to go in these parallel lines all the way across in every little section of here, and then I'll get the carving finished. Now when I come to the edges, I will actually make sure that I leave a border. Now if you're not happy to just go freehand and go in, then by all means just take a pencil and draw a border in so that you know how far that you want your tool to go. Otherwise, if you're feeling brave, you just go straight in, leave a little edge here, and just go all the way across. Now you'll find when you come to the other end, if you just flick your U-blade up when you come to up just about there, and then that will create the edge of the border for you. So let's go in again. And this I tend to do quite quickly really. Now it doesn't matter that you've got that slightly out, because it's going to just create a nice patterned border. As you can see, it's not all uniform along there, and I don't want it to be. The top and bottom are going to be uniform, but I quite like the fact that it's a bit jaggy around the edges. So I'm going to carry on with that, and then once that's done, we'll take a test print, and then we'll go in and do a bit of detail on the holly and ivy leaves.